Dear friends, welcome to the Priest Podcast, sponsored by the Napa Institute. You may not know it, but one of Napa's most meaningful efforts involves the formation and support of priests and religious. We have become fascinated by the stories of our clergy. Through this podcast, we want to bring you some of these amazing stories too, but in a way that is unique. Priests interviewing other priests from all walks of life and backgrounds. We think this series will be a great resource for everyone, those considering the priesthood, as well as those in active ministry who may be struggling or just looking for good ideas. But even the laity will benefit by learning more about the needs and thoughts of the clergy as we consider how to support and pray for them, given all they do for us. So sit back and enjoy this glimpse into the life and work of the priest. In today's episode, Father Eric Cadin will interview Father Mark Horn.
Hello everyone, my name is Father Eric Cadin, today's host for the Shepherd's Circle podcast, produced by the Napa Institute. I am delighted to welcome to the podcast Father Mark Horn. He is a priest of the Diocese of Rapid City and currently is a pastor in Rapid City. And he was ordained a priest in 2015 and has had various assignments since then. And so I'm excited to hear him speak about his priestly experiences. So Father Mark Horn, welcome to the Shepherd's Circle podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to begin, as we do with a lot of these podcasts, in really learning about how a man is formed and shaped and hears with courage and boldness that voice of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, calling after him. So where did your vocation begin?
Well, I do have to give a lot of credit to my parents, just raising us in the Catholic faith. Even my dad's Lutheran, but he supported Mom 100% with all of us kids. So I'm fourth generation on our family farm and ranch in just West River, South Dakota, south central South Dakota, a very small town. And going to Mass, and just from a young age, just had it was very easy to relate with God and to know that God loves me. And so, but from there, through high school, I'd say as a pretty typical, high school athlete, went to church, kind of a sense of responsibility, more so because Mom said you had to. It was really the summer before my senior year that I had a powerful experience of Christ in the Eucharist on a retreat, again, that Mom forced me to go to. I was ready for football and fall camp, but she forced me to go on this thing. And Dad supported her, so it was a Steubenville conference, which was in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I'll just kind of summarize it, that it was a time of teenage angst, I think, of just a lot of things happening to me, but also that I was doing to myself through a lot of selfishness and just kind of macho, I don't even know what to call it, big-headedness. Mm-hmm. And I was just really frustrated and empty. And the experience of the Eucharist was in this big gym, like 1,000 roughly high schoolers, and it was silent. And I always knew that Christ was in the Eucharist. What difference that made in my life? Not a lot, but I knew that that's what we believed as Catholics. But I'd never experienced Eucharistic adoration before. And so that was the first time they put him in the monstrance. I'm like, what is they doing? That's Jesus. What are they doing on the altar? And then they start processing him up and down the aisles with incense. And this is all like brand new to me. I'd never experienced that part of our Catholic faith. And let's just say that the speaker explaining it did a good job of explaining it. And he said, look, if you are kind of empty right now in your life, or you're angry or whatever, and just kind of explain where I was at, and you feel guilty, just open your heart, because Christ loves you and he wants to help you. And it was an experience at the same time of guilt, of conviction, of sin, as definitely a moral conversion, but at the same time of great love, and which broke down a lot of my defenses. For the first time, I think I personally took my Catholic faith and made it my own. It was no longer my parents'. And I was just a mess of tears and emotion. I was confused. I knew that my life was not heading to heaven at the time, but yet I was loved beyond my deserve. And the question was not, does God love me? Is God real? No. The question is, what's my response to that? I went to confession. The priest there was just great. He laughed, not at me, but laughed with me, because he could see what God was doing in my life. And he said, God is setting you on a whole new trajectory, and you just need to be faithful to him. From that moment on, now, the thought of priesthood was nowhere in sight. If you would have asked me at that time, are you thinking about being a priest? I'd be like, what's he do all week? Like, I see him on Sunday. Was he go golfing or fishing? I don't know what he does. Like, it seemed boring to me. So, like, no, I don't want to become a priest. That wasn't even the thought. But quickly, that year I got confirmed, and I started taking my Catholic faith much more seriously after that powerful experience with the Eucharist. Like, okay, God is real. He's here in the Eucharist. He loves me. My salvation and my rest of my eternity, my life depends upon my response to him. And so I wanted to learn about my faith. I kind of just dove in, head over heels. God put, and this has been my experience of my whole vocation, is like, as soon as I said yes to God, he's already got the next 10 steps figured out for me. And if I'm faithful and trust him, he won't show it all to me. He'll just show me maybe the next step. But he put all these people into my life, good role models, people with whom I'm still in touch with today. And eventually, I'll just fast forward through my senior year of high school and then into college. I went 2 years at South Dakota State University studying civil engineering, thinking I was kind of getting my life on track, and I knew exactly where it was going. Started dating a gal, thinking, after 2 years of dating her, marriage is it. All the while, the Lord is just kind of pulling me slowly in my heart, giving me deeper peace, greater trust in him, leading me in prayer. On the college campus, there was Focus Missionaries, and they got me started with the Bible study, growing intellectually in my faith, but also morally, saying, okay, you need to start living the virtues too, dude. Like, you can't be like the rest of society. So I had a lot of changing and maturing and growing up to do, and a lot of falls. So confession and mass were huge. Actually, the priest at the Newman Center at the time is now my spiritual director. We're still in touch. He was instrumental. Again, all these people God started putting in my life once I started saying, Lord, I want to follow you. Can you show me how to do this? And so fast forwarding through that, eventually, even through my dating relationship, as much peace as I had, like where I was actually growing in a virtuous Catholic dating relationship, the Lord was pulling me more to prayer, to the deeper peace of silence with the Lord. And then the question came, okay, there's no accident with you, God. I have all these plans for myself. What's your plan? And I started opening myself to that different way of thinking. And what did you create me for? That question. And then it wasn't immediate, but slowly, it was like the Lord asking me, answering my question with another question. Would you like to be my priest? And I'm like, well, I want to do your will. Okay. But that question came, and I wasn't producing it, and it was a question that excited me because I wanted to be more radical in my following of the Lord, but I wasn't quite sure if I was ready to give up, the potential of marriage. And
that's right.
And so that whole battle, which I know many priests have gone through, it's too cliche, but Jesus or the girl. Eventually, I realized, okay, and through the good help of the priest, he saw that the Lord was knocking on my heart, and I was not going to be at peace until I actually checked out if the priesthood was for me. And so I saw the writing on the wall, helped my girlfriend see the writing on the wall, had a whole breakup and a whole drama there, and God bless her for not...
Did she see it as clearly as you did?
She started to, actually. We pray the rosary together on dates. We'd stop in the chapel after coming home from a party. We'd go to Mass together. And she was actually praying that I would not enter the seminary. I found this out later. And I was transparent with her too, because I didn't know what God was doing in my heart. I was like, I think he might be calling me to the priesthood. And looking back, it's hilarious now, but at the time, I was just being honest, and transparent. And so, no, I think we both saw it. I think we both ran from it. But eventually, I saw the writing on the wall and took that hard step. And I thank God that he gave me the courage. I don't know how I had the courage at the time to do it. And then after that kind of heartbreak period, I came crawling. There's a whole other story with my vocations director, how he was her pastor. And so when I go home from college on weekends, we go to Mass together. And then he would And actually, she got me in touch with him. So this is Father Brian Christensen, for our listeners may know him. He's a great priest in our diocese. She got me in touch with him when I started talking to her about the priesthood, because he had a whole vocation story where he was in the Air Force, a bomber pilot, about to get married, but then God called him. And so that was courageous on her part to make me, she gave me his number. I called him up one night. We talked for like 2 hours. And he helped me to see, okay, here's what God did in my life. Here's what he might be doing in your heart if you're feeling this restlessness. And but then he wouldn't quit calling me, so I had to like block him. And then I go,
Good for him.
He was, it's hilarious. He would walk right past me after Mass when I was home with my girlfriend at the time, and he would say to her, "So when's your boyfriend going to finally go to the seminary?" I was like, "Oh, you jackwagon!" Like you are blocked. Like we're done. And then eventually, after the breakup, fast forward there, I came crawling back, and he's like, "Yeah, I know you're called." So again, all these people God started putting in my life. I only see it in retrospect, so eventually I entered seminary. I did not finish my engineering degree, and kind of entered with the intention, okay, God, I'm going to give you my best so you can show me priesthood is not what you want for me. And then, so again, my ideas, my projections of my future. But within that first year of seminary, I had Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary. And again, good formators that he put into my life, good, solid priests, holy priests. I felt so attracted to the priesthood that my motivation shifted to, okay, I want to become a priest, I think. We'll see how this pans out, but you make darn clear to me, God, if you don't want me to, because I don't want to screw this up, because I know how important the priesthood is. At that point, I had a tremendous reverence for the priesthood. The priests in my life, thanks be to God, I never had a bad example of a priest. They were integratable men, joyful men, full of life. In fact, my Lutheran father, and I don't think he would mind me sharing this, is I remember when I first started thinking about the priesthood seriously after my conversion or reconversion, we were combining wheat one summer, and I'm telling him, I'm just like spilling my guts to him, and he's listening quietly, and he just turns to me and says, "Mark," from his Lutheran perspective, "I don't ever want you to become a priest." Because in his mind, like, you're never going to have kids, you're never going to be happy. Like, that seems like a horrible idea.
You're going to be lonely and sad.
Yes. But eventually, I was like, well, tough. I'm going to do what I think God's calling me. It's like, that's not going to stop me. But when I started showing him, the people I was hanging out with, the seminarians, the priests, he's like, I think he started seeing intuitively, oh, these are good men. They're happy. They're I would trust these men, and now I don't have a bigger supporter than my dad. He's like totally, supportive. And then so seminary moves forward. I did 3 years of college seminary, and then I studied theology, and I did have a healthy vocation crisis right before I went back to be ordained a transitional deacon. I remember that was very clear. As I had 2 weeks off, thanks be to God, from my parish ministry before I got on the plane to go back to Rome to be ordained a deacon. And so I spent the time with Dad on the farm, and it was haying season in August.
What does that mean, haying season?
Hey, okay, for the listeners who like steak, we feed cows in the wintertime with hay, which is cut grass, cut alfalfa. So we bale it, and it's all for feeding our cattle in the winter times so that you have tasty steaks.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm out there in the field, okay, and I'm done cutting hay, I'm done baling it, and stacking the bales. It's just beautiful, and the sun's setting, and it's just one of those times where you just feel, I made a difference in the world. Like this, everything's right. You're tired, you're worn out, and it's one of those moments where like all of the thoughts of what could be for my future, of possibly my own family, just came crashing down. But at the same time, knowing that God had been faithful all through those 7 years of seminary formation, and now I'm on the cusp of saying yes to the rest of my life. No takebacks. I honestly think that a man getting married or a man getting ordained who's not shaking his boots, scared that, if he doesn't, I don't think he's taking it serious. Personally, that's my experience. So I was like, at the same time, I was like, I'm shutting the door permanently to any romantic relationship with a woman ever again, to biological children of my own. I'm saying yes to this great adventure. I don't know where it's going to lead me. But even there, it's like, we read for theology, St. John Chrysostom's letter on the priesthood. And he said, getting ordained is kind of dangerous. Don't you screw it up, because if you screw it up and scandalize people, it's not just, your soul, you're leading other people potentially to hell. I'm like, oh, that's lovely. No pressure. And so the weight of my decision came crashing down on me, and I was an absolute mess. And I couldn't eat that night. I was just a ball of tears. I didn't know if I was going to get on the plane. And my mom and dad just, they prayed over me, They kind of slapped me like, come on, take some responsibility. You got this.
You can do this.
I spent the night in Adoration in our local hometown church, and that gave me the strength that, okay, you've never let me down. This is not on me. I'm feeling the weight of this responsibility, but this is a gift. You would not call me God to something that you would not lead me through at the same time. You're trustworthy. So that, I think, was a good gut check. So after that, I got on the plane, went to Rome, did our canonical retreat with my classmates, and the Lord blessed me tremendously with conviction and peace and zeal, and I was ordained a deacon, and finished out the rest of that year, and then came home, was ordained a priest, 2015, in my diocese with a brother priest, Father John Paul Trask, another excellent priest of our diocese. And now, so coming on this next July, will be 10 years ordained a priest, and it gets better. God asks everything of us. He asks us to give him our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our relationships. My first year as a priest, I was blessed to be a parochial vicar under Monsignor Wooster in Spearfish, South Dakota. Had 3 parishes plus a Newman Center, and dove into priesthood there and made a lot of mistakes. Every night, I come in after, good day, bad day, and he'd be watching his country western, and he'd pause it and turn to me. He's like, "So how's your day?" And I'd tell him, and he's like, "Well, that didn't go so well. So next time you do that, you might consider this." And so we had a good relationship that way. But I'm very grateful for the priests of our diocese who have been great role models for me and supports for me. So I spent 1 year in that parish, or that set of parishes. But then Bishop Gruss at the time, I had started my study of my license of canon law so that I could work in our marriage tribunal. That's a whole other story. He helped me to see between the lines that he needed me to study canon law, which was not my first choice. And so I did it, and I'm actually really grateful I did. I said yes, because it's an extremely important ministry when people go through divorces. A lot of, even Catholics, non-Catholics for sure don't understand the whole annulment process. A lot of Catholics don't understand it. But really upholding at the same time, the indissolubility of marriage that Jesus taught, and the dignity of marriage, but at the same time, compassion for these souls who have gone through train wrecks and abuse and whatever, and broken marriages. It's a really important ministry to help people know that they're not rejected, they're never condemned, there's always a way forward if there's faith in Christ. And so, anyways, I had 2 more years of canon law to finish, to get my license to work in our marriage tribunal. So our bishop said, after a year of priesthood, we're good here. We think you need to go back and finish that. So I did that. And so 2 more years of canon law. I met a lot of great priests who, we're here at the Napa Institute right now, and a lot of these guys who are here at the Shepherd's Circle that I got to be reconnected with, I met while I was studying in Rome. So that was a whole another great chapter, 2 years of my priesthood of going deeper in studies, but also just meeting other good priests my age and around the whole United States. That's a big reason why I'm doing this podcast right now. I'm at this thing because I met these guys through my further studies there. Then 2018, went back home, immediately given responsibility, basically as a pastor, administrator of 2 parishes, and I've been at these same set of parishes in the Black Hills ever since. So Hill City, South Dakota, and Keystone, South Dakota. 2 small parishes with huge tourist influx because Mount Rushmore is in my parish boundaries. So we get people coming to Mount Rushmore every summer and Crazy Horse Monument. So I've been there since 2018. My responsibilities, and I just got reassigned for 6 more years. I'm very grateful for with our new bishop, Scott Bullock. So my responsibilities include 2 parishes and all that entails, but also I'm the chaplain of Hispanic ministry in our diocese. So in Rapid City and all the Black Hills, basically, I'm the priest that speaks Spanish, and they've been very patient with this gringo's improving Spanish, I'll say. Love the people, and I'm very grateful for their love for me. I have awesome parishioners, really. And then the canon law. So I kind of have 3 ministries: Hispanic ministry, my parishes, and then also canon law. I do that 2 days a week. I'm a judge for annulments. So yeah.
So Father, first, thank you. That was extraordinary. And I think a theme throughout everything you've been saying is God's grace leading. As you put so well, His providence moving in your life, sending the right people at the right time, which manifests His faithfulness. Yeah. It in so much of being a father to people is to lead them to that, not only that same understanding, but that same receptivity of God's love, of the Father's mercy and His grace, which is manifest in your own life. And we bring it into our people. Just to go back to one thing you said, so I work in vocations in Boston, and you had mentioned near the beginning of your story when you were at that Steubenville conference how, if someone had said, do you want to be a priest? You would have thought, well, no, absolutely not, because what does a priest even do? And, I'd always joke, I imagine without any exposure, if you were to ask a young man or a young person, what do priests do? They certainly would say, well, they celebrate Mass on Sunday. And then I guess they just sit in a room all day, all week, staring at a wall that probably has a cross on it, and praying, thinking, and so that may not be the most attractive image, but even your story shows a humanity and in a real life, a real man who is transformed by the gospel. One of the things we had talked about beforehand, which I think is not only important and helpful for all of us to reflect upon, but again speaks to how God's love and His providence can shape and form a people. We were talking about church renovations. Yes. And, and especially in a place like South Dakota, where, you have, as you mentioned, a couple parishes, a couple churches, and a place certainly of natural beauty. I think, and you even described that in your own vocation story about after the hanging, which I learned about, how, with the sun setting in this extraordinary place that is showing the beauty, the adventure, the grandeur who is God, which you certainly experience in the Black Hills, and wanting to bring that into the church, which sounds obvious and easy, but isn't always. So I wonder if you can kind of walk us through what's happening in your parish.
Sure. So in my parish in Hill City, St. Rose of Lima, For the past 2 years, well, for me, it's been a journey since the pandemic. I'll start there. Well, I mean, really all my life, I've always seen the power of beauty to attract, but especially in my experience of the church and the liturgy has the more I've learned about the liturgy, and of course, the thing that drew me to God more than anything has been his real presence in the Eucharist, and his presence there, and his love for me there. And then, so the more I've been on this journey to come closer to him and to know him, and I want to love him, I want to serve him, I've come to understand how he makes himself available and present through the liturgy. And the depth of that has led me to to me, it's a common sense conclusion of the church. Like we decorate and we put beauty around the most important things to highlight them, to make us want to spend time there. And so in the churches I've been at that have led me to this deeper encounter with Jesus in his Eucharistic presence, it makes sense that they're not empty boxes, that he's the one that created all this beauty that I love in nature. And in that beauty one day I want to experience in heaven. And so because the liturgy is a foretaste of that, of that beauty that he is, why wouldn't we want to make our churches radiate something of that? Now, who's going to be able to radiate the full beauty of heaven? No one perfectly, but we try. And so anyways, going back to the pandemic, I started really I had a little more time on my hands to dig deeper into the liturgy and beauty. And one of the things that I noticed first of all in our church was that the tabernacle is off-centered. And that was just like, maybe if you had a side adoration chapel, that might be justified, but it just seemed off. Like you go into this beautiful, and it really is a beautiful little church. We have like 120 families in our parish total. And we have stained glass windows that depict symbolically saints of North and South America. But then you get closer to the sanctuary where the beauty should really just explode and radiate and draw you into the heavenly liturgy that we enter into every Mass. Okay, the tabernacle's off the center. It's kind of a beige wall in the back, got a crucifix, carpet, and kind of a space station looking light fixture over the top. It really lowers there's no sense of like, I'm entering into a new dimension here. Because when we enter into liturgy, we're entering into it's this profound meeting between heaven and earth. And you don't get that in the current arrangement in our sanctuary. It's like, this isn't bad, but there's a lot left to be desiring. And the back wall just screamed to me, first of all, it's just like a tapestry waiting to happen. And so, but the first thing is like, could we? What can we do? Could we center the tabernacle and just, the help people see the symbolism of the body of Christ, that the head is at the dead center, and bodies are beautiful when they're symmetrical. It's just common sense. Like there's no better place for this, more prominent where Jesus Christ is than the center. But if you do that, you got to take this out. If you take that out, you got to raise this. If you take that out, it's like, let's slow down. Let's think this through. And actually, you know what? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. The church has already thought these things through. There's a lot the church has said already about beauty, objective beauty, what the church should be, namely a sacramental sign, a visible sign of what we enter into in the Eucharist and in the liturgy. So I started educating myself, trying to get the best name, theologians and architects. And what I realized, okay, and I was also very aware, the more I started talking about this openly with the parish, people got tense, like, oh dear. I'm like, oh, I touched a button there. And so the more I started digging into that, people started telling me stories about, okay, in the past, this got moved or that happened. Some things were for the benefit, but also, we weren't really told why Father so-and-so did this, why the ambo got moved over there, why the tabernacle had to go here. They just did it, and we weren't told why. And so I'm like, we need to be very careful here so we don't divide the parish. And people are very attached to the church. And where I really realize I have to be very careful and educate the people, inform the people in what the liturgy is, what the Eucharist is, and why we need beauty in the church, is I announced just kind of off the cuff one day. Someone said, "Father, people are murmuring or kind of there's tensions, there's rumblings about some of the things comments you've made about renovating the church, and people are confused and they're apprehensive. You need to clarify this." Well, all right. So I clarified it, but I didn't really, I just kind of said an idea out there, which involved a lot of color, let's say. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if, and I just went into like this vision of heaven that we could make, in the sanctuary. Oh my goodness. And then that let the floodgates loose. All the conversations happened in the parking lot. And then I heard about it through the pastoral council, and like people very, very concerned and angry perhaps. And I'm like, oh. But the comment that most made me realize, okay, we need to slow down and talk this through and educate ourselves in the beauty of art and architecture, which is essential to the liturgy, was the comment, well, Father, you're just going to, you're here for 6 years and then you're gone. And then whatever you do, the next priest is just going to undo, and after all, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I was like, whoa, okay, thank you. Okay.
Right, and that's something, just briefly, I was really fascinated when we were talking about, because things like church renovations and improvements, for some seem obvious, and for others they can have opposition, some reasonable, some unreasonable. But that comment, I think, was so striking to me, of realizing in any parish where there's limited resources and time, that when things happen without formation, that the people really recognize, well, someone else will come in and have a different idea, and it'll cost us more money, and it'll change, and we just have to suffer through that.
Right, and we're stuck with it.
And they might even say, we like what Father did, but the next priest might have a different opinion, and then we'll repaint and maybe recarpet or something.
Is there any continuity here at all?
Right.
Yeah, and so I'm very sympathetic to that too, because it's like, nobody wants whiplash, and part of our Catholic faith is that, there are certain truths that never change. Certain things, yeah, but fundamental realities, people want that continuity. And
how did you approach this?
So I said, okay, we're going to slow down like 20 steps, and we're going to, I want to form us in the Catholic tradition. And so another priest in our diocese was also doing a renovation, and he had developed himself with his parish through trial and error, I think, a course syllabus. And it was his was 18 weeks long. I shortened ours to 16 weeks. But I then said to the people, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying, that there's a lot of concern about what I'm thinking about with a potential renovation. I would like anyone who wants to have a say in this to have an informed say, and I want you to help me. But the only condition is that all those people need to be on a team that goes through this course. And I'll give you the course, and it's going to involve some reading, so it's going to be a sacrifice. We'll meet weekly. We'll talk about the reading, and we're going to form ourselves before we even talk about costs and budgets and all that other practical stuff. Let's just form ourselves in the mind of the church first. And what I love about that is then that capacitates the people to say, oh, I know what the church says about this. And so it's not what Father thinks, so-and-so thinks. It's, Father, here's what the Mother Church is asking of us. And people know that our priests want to be faithful to the church. So we did that. And it had its ups and downs. But in the end, the fruit of that 16-week course was a lot of minds got open. My mind got open even further as well. Read a lot of good books, and people started getting answers to the questions like, well, why did this happen in the 1970s or the 1980s? We had this, but then it got reversed, and then that got reversed, and blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't as drastic as some churches, but there was some definite major changes. And so people started seeing, not all of that change was necessarily justified. So anyways, but now looking at the theology of beauty, especially that of St. Thomas Aquinas, the people really grasp to that, that there's three objective elements to beauty. Contrary to beauty is in the eye of the beholder, no, beauty is focused in God. And God is not just what you make of him. You need to conform yourself to God. And so he reveals beauty by revealing himself. And so, and of course, Thomas Aquinas was drawing from Aristotle that the three constituent elements of beauty are, let me get this right now, integritas, which integrity, namely, has neither more or less, but the proper component parts, the analogy of the human body. You're not lacking an arm. That's not beautiful. But then also consonantia, or is proportion, that there's proper proportion. So it's not a cartoon rendering of it, but it's like, things are in proper relationship one to another. And you talk about color there as well. But then the third element is claritas, which is just clarity and brilliance. That the objective truth of whatever you're talking about, if you're talking about a beautiful thing or person, clarity is that aspect that, it has all the requisite parts and relationship one to another, but then they just shine and they shout to you like, wow, she's beautiful. I want to get to know her. That church is beautiful. What's the mystery that this church is revealing here? What's the truth being revealed here? And we know that intuitively. And so the fruit of that has been, a lot of minds opened. And then the next step was hiring an architect, and a Catholic architect who does Catholic church as well. And he himself understands this theology of the liturgy. We ended up going with a guy named Steve Baker out of Colorado. And even that was a beautiful process of involving the whole committee, everyone who took the course, okay? And we actually, I wrote this 20-page letter, which I'm sure nobody read. But I wanted to make clear to the parish, okay, if you don't want to take this whole course, here's a condensed version. It was size 14 font, all right?
I said 20 pages, okay.
A meditation on heaven. What are the principles that need to be used? And how are we going to apply, then, thirdly, those principles to our church? But then the committee, we did a whole interview process with different architects, and two actually came out to our parish in South Dakota and visited us. And we ended up going with Steve. And what's awesome about that experience, too, is the people on the committee were still kind of apprehensive, like, what design are we going to go with now? How are we going to materialize, make sacramentally visible this encounter that we have with God in the liturgy? And what he had was this software, or this technology. Basically, he's in Denver, we're in Hill City, and in real time through a Zoom meeting, and we've been meeting with him since last June. He had all the dimensions of our church and a 3D rendering. In real time, he's moving this here, moving that there, putting this, change that color. Let's see what this looks like. And he could show us a real 3D rendering of what we're talking about. What was interesting about that whole process, we had almost come to a final design by at the end of August, after 2 months of doing this, meeting every week. And it was satisfactory. I was fine with it. It got labeled a cookie cutter European model by one of our members. Like, okay. And so, but there wasn't quite unanimity with that design. We were like, it's beautiful, but we can't put our finger on what's missing. And so I was like, okay, well, while we're thinking about this, let's look at this. I looked at this church from Southern California that has this massive mural. It's a brand new church. I forget the name of it, but it has this massive mural of like a Southern California idyllic landscape, but then above it, heaven and the saints all adoring the Trinity. And I was like, I pulled that up on the screen. I was like, imagine if we did this, like copy and paste this. That's not legal. You can't do that. But just to start the creative gears going, put that on our wall and obviously make it more proportionate to our size. Our architect could do that and just give us a vision, which to me speaks loads. Like, people without a vision perishes, right? Mm-hmm. We couldn't come to any unanimity until we could see what could be. And he gave us a snapshot of what this could be. And it was like a collective gasp in the room when we did that. And like, I think that's the route we need to go. And so the architect was probably ready to wring my neck because we had spent 2 months coming to this, and now we're like, yeah, save that, don't delete that, but let's go this totally different route. And long story short, that's the route we're going, and it's a kind of a vision of heaven. Without going into too much detail, like it's centering the tabernacle. It's the flooring, the lighting, the sound system, all leading to a much more beautiful, transcendent view that's kind of making more symbolically visible, even in architecture, of the encounter with God and mankind in the liturgy. And it's, after we've had kind of our fights and our ups and downs in the committee, we know each other a lot better. We work together on this. And we're in greater unanimity now. I think we trust each other a lot more. And we just, 2 weeks ago, we showed it to some leadership in our parish before we take it to the Presbyteral Council to get the bishop's approval. And our people, we were apprehensive. Like, we did a whole presentation of this 2-year process we've been on, because the people have been anticipating this. Like, when are you going to show it to us, Father? And we did it. We're like, oh, what's the price tag going to be? And people are like, yeah, this is good. And we still got a lot of steps to go, a lot of fundraising and stuff. But like, it's been a teaching example in multiple things. First of all, to help our people to see what's possible. But it's helped me as a pastor. You were talking earlier about being a father. These are my children, even though many of them are like twice my age. I love them. And but it teaches me how to walk with them and to help them to see perhaps more than what they were capable of seeing on their own prior to this whole project, maybe. I do feel even a deeper fatherly love for them all through all of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that, first, thank you. I mean, really an extraordinary witness of a father and a leader who, with intentionality and patience, shaped a people, helped them, as St. Paul calls us to always, to put on Christ, where it was not just anything you were trying to do, but through the mind of the church, which is becoming their own.
Yes.
Which is amazing. And so I'm certain that, the fruitfulness of that in their own lives, in their own homes, wasn't just a project that you're undertaking, but is, a transformation of a people, but each individual, as you were, sharing with them their inheritance as sons and daughters, which is just fantastic.
And if I could just add one more thing there too, it went both ways. I was not a perfect father through all this. There were some tense moments for sure, but they form, and it's always mutual, right? The people form you as a priest, as a father, just as much as you're trying to form them as the children of God that they are. And they taught me lessons of humility, of greater patience, better communication, I hope. That's communication, not my strong suit. And no, there's a lot of lessons I've learned, I think, humbly through this as well.
Well, fantastic. It's been great today to have the chance to talk to Father Mark Horn of the Diocese of Rapid City about his vocation, certainly about his life, the work that you've done, and especially to hear about how fatherhood in leading a people in an extraordinary project of beauty, of imagination, of their inheritance, of how fruitful that is, and lasting. So imagine what the world would be like if we had more priests like you. That's why the Lord Jesus urges each of us to pray to the harvest master for more laborers for his harvest. So please join us in praying for shepherds after Jesus' heart, and encourage the young men who show signs of a vocation to ask Jesus in prayer whether Jesus might be calling them to serve him, his church, and the world as ordained priests. So please check back next week for an interview with another hardworking priest in the vineyard of the Lord. I'm Father Eric Cadin, and I've been delighted to be your host today on the Shepherd's Circle podcast.
Thanks again for joining us today. For more information about how you can join us in supporting our work with clergy and religious, go to napa-institute.org. May God bless you this day and always.